normal format now. When all the cars are stopped and in place, the red light will go on and we're ready to go.
2-litre cars, they have a constrictor in the engine to constrict the airflow and thus reduce the power to about 160 horsepower, a good Formula 3 car will be producing. And in spite of that constrictor, they will be doing up almost 150 miles an hour as they approach the chicane. So Tim Davis on the left in pole position, his teammate Andy Wallace in the other Swallow Racing Reynard alongside him. On the left of the second rank, Maurizio Gugelmin, and it's a super start for Tim Davis, and Andy Wallace has lost the engine altogether. This is the second appalling bit of luck for Andy Wallace. Now he's got away, last of all. Andy Wallace, who won the first Formula 3 race of the year, and it was his first Formula 3 race ever at Silverstone, has lost the engine completely at the start. Everybody got away before he did. It's Tim Davis leading, it's Maurizio Gugelmin in second.
There was a big shunt at the chicane. Our car was actually turning over. As we saw, back to that first chicane, please.
Well, on they go, and it's still Tim Davis leading. But Maurizio Gugelmin, who's driving for Dick Bennett, the extremely gifted New Zealand team manager and ex-mechanic who's a very skilled tactician, has been striving ever since the season began to get the Rult on terms with the Reynard cars. And it's Russell Spence in third place, the championship leader, coming down to the end of the first of 20 laps, and into the chicane goes Russell Spence there. Tim Davis leading, Maurizio Gugelmin in second position, Russell Spence is third, Kathy Buller, the French girl driver, is in fourth position in the Dave Price car. In fifth position it's Maurizio Sandro Sala, and off spins number 63 there, Godfrey Hall in the Rult Toyota, and he's clouted the curb good and hard. He's probably damaged the underside of the car or the right rear suspension, but anyway, into the Campbell-Cobb-Seagrave complex of corners, the right, left, right that James was telling you about, goes the leader Tim Davis. Now Tim is in fourth position in the championship. There he is now, comes from Lampeter in Wales, and a man who started his career on auto grass racing some years ago, and it looks as though he's showing Gugelmin the way and is going to continue to do so.
Yes, indeed. He's going very nice and steadily. He'll be pleased, I would think, to have seen the early demise of Andy Wallace. And really, unless he had something actually wrong with his engine, that was a very bad mistake, because these are easy engines to keep running, and that's bad concentration, and he'll really be kicking himself, but that was a very silly, inexperienced mistake. They're not like the turbocharged Grand Prix cars, the bigger engine cars, where the engines really are quite difficult to hold the revs up. These are very simple and straightforward. So Andy Wallace, if there's nothing wrong with his engine, will be kicking himself very hard.
Oh, he's got it going now. He's up to 18th position at the end of the first lap. At the end of the first lap, Andy Wallace had come through from 29th to 18th, and Tim Davis spins off. He's lost it. Now, this is going to be really exciting, because Tim Davis hasn't lost the engine. He just spun off, and that means for the first time this season, Maurizio Gugelmin, the Brazilian driver, who obviously exchanges tactical thoughts with Ayrton Senna, because as I said earlier on, they live in the same house in Reading, and Ayrton Senna is an ex-British Formula 3 champion, and now Gugelmin for the first time this season leads, and a Rult leads for the first time this season. And Ron Touranak, who is the R and the T of Rult, it stands for Ronald and Leslie Touranak, the brothers who originally started the business, and Ron Touranak is here with his Formula 3000 team, and he will undoubtedly be watching and feeling heartened by seeing Gugelmin go into the lead. And we're coming up now to the end of the third lap, and Russell Spence, amazingly, who won the first and third races in the championship, finished second in the second race, seems to be able to do nothing about Gugelmin. I know that Dick Bennett has been working very hard indeed since the last race at Silverstone to improve the aerodynamics of the Rult, and also has effected 1 or 2 suspension tweaks. And Mauricio Gugelmin, 22 years old, who comes from Curitiba in Brazil, is certainly making the most of it.
Well, that was the most extraordinary unforced error by Tim Davis. Obviously, he was in as much of a hurry as possible. And here we see it again now. He just flicks the car on the curb, but he totally fails to control it. There was no reason why he shouldn't have held that slide. He obviously gave it a little bit of a kick, but that's bad concentration, and he'll learn a lot from that, because it's not clever to spin out of a comfortable lead like that. It's one thing when you're being pressed right up your exhaust pipe by somebody, but that really wasn't necessary. So learning days for these relatively inexperienced drivers, but Gugelmin is going very smoothly and sensibly, and Russell Spence, the championship leader, is holding him, not really making much impression on him at the moment, but there's a way to go yet, and there the field is beginning to pack through, working for the places.
Yes, and Kathy Muller, the girl driver, is in 3rd position, but, and this is really interesting, you just see them coming out of the complex. Right up with Kathy Muller is Mauricio Sandro Sala, yet another of the gifted Brazilians who are in racing these days. There's Kathy Muller 3rd, behind her is Sandro Sala, behind Sandro Sala in the red and white car is Harold Heisman, and there is Andy Wallace. The last of the cars you're looking at now is Andy Wallace, who at the end of the previous lap, that was lap 5, had carved his way up to 12th position. Andy Wallace is really flying through the field. He's probably got a red mist in front of his eyes now, kicking himself, as James said, for that awful start that he had. Now there's Kathy Muller 3rd, Sandro Sala 4th, Heisman 5th, then is Mark Galvin, the Irish driver, and then Tony Reid in the in Reynard with the Saab engine, the Swedish Saab engine, 16-valve, 4-cylinder with this special injection system that they have on it. Mauricio Gugelmin then leads. This is the end of lap 5. It's a quarter distance. Russell Spence is not catching Gugelmin, but Kathy Muller in the dark blue Dave Price Rult seems to me to be closing the gap on Russell Spence a bit, and it's really close behind her with Sandro Sala next in 4th position, and you just saw Andy Wallace going through the chicane there and starting to close.
Yes, and Tim Davis has recovered after his spin and is back in 8th place, but at the back of that group that are all disputing 3rd place. So Tim Davis is in a position to recover his indiscretion to a large extent, and could, if he has a good run, fight his way back up into the first 3.
Yes, Tim Davis recovering well from that half spin of his, and now you look at Gugelmin and it looks as though the Brazilian is going to make it his first victory, because quite clearly in the white, gold and black car Russell Spence can do nothing about it. Now where is Tim Davis? Well, there, number 27 in 4th position, which is the highest position he's had in the series so far, is Sandro Sala, and you can see that I think it's Mark Galvin is catching and passing Heisman as they go down towards Brooklyn to the right-hander. Gugelmin leads. Here is Spence in 2nd place, then Kathy Muller, and right behind Kathy Muller is Sandro Sala. Heisman is in 5th position, Mark Galvin is in 6th place, and Tim Davis is up into 7th position. He's ahead of Anthony Reid, who is 8th, and in 9th place is Phil Kemp, the Welshman. This is the Campbell Cobb Seagrave complex. They exited in 4th gear at about 125 miles an hour. There's Russell Spence. Here in 3rd position, Kathy Muller, driving an absolutely superb race. There in the white helmet, Tim Davis. That was Anthony Reid. This is Phil Kemp, the Welshman, racing again after a 2-year layoff with glandular fever, which took him a long, long time to recover from. We are on lap 7 in this 20-lap race, and it looks as though 1985 history is being made in Formula 3 racing, because Gugelmin, here he is really seeing off in his Rult the Reynards, which have been so dominant up to now. Gugelmin, the 1983 Formula 4 2000 champion, and 1984 European champion, 3rd in the British Championship. A background like so many of them in kart racing, some 11 years he had. Brazil kart champion in 1980, and then he came over to Britain in 1982 to win the RAC Formula Ford Championship and finished second in the Townsend Torreson Championship. So at 22, he has been racing for literally half of his life. No wonder he has experience.
Well, Tim Davis came past us at the end of that lap, still in 7th place, and obviously he has thrown away the advantage of his pole position and the nice lead he got off the line when unchallenged by the stalled Andy Wallace. So he seems to be stuck in the traffic queue, and that's one of the difficulties of Formula 3. You can go a lot quicker on your own very often, but once you get in the traffic, it can be quite difficult on this Thruxton circuit to overtake. Although a lot of the circuit is flat out for these cars, it winds about just that little bit too much to get a line to go past somebody, and so and also, of course, the problem with interference, aerodynamic interference when following another car means that you can't go quite as quickly through the corners behind it, and you lose a bit of time.
Yes, and Gugelmin is closing the gap as we look at Sandro Sala in 4th position, number 27 in the Reynard Saab, right with Cathy Muller, just ahead of Harold Heisman, and it's Reynard Rult, therefore, and I say Maurizio Gugelmin in the lead is closing the gap between himself. There's some 6 seconds between the third, and it's increasing all the time, and Gugelmin is closing the gap between himself and the championship leader Russell Spence, who's in 2nd place in the race. But this is the interest and the battle, and it's for 3rd place with Cathy Muller, 23 years old, comes from France, and she, like most of today's competitors, started in kart racing, indeed an ex-European champion.
I saw a blue car going slowly round the back then, Murray. I just hope that it wasn't Gugelmin. It looks as if it might have been, just slowed down out on the far side of the circuit.
Well, let's watch out and see if we see the white car of Russell Spence in the lead when we next look from Brooklands. Well, there is Russell Spence. Now, is Gugelmin in front of him? Yes, there's Gugelmin. Gugelmin still leading as they come up to complete the 9th lap, which is starting the half distance, lap 10, as Muller in 3rd place. Sandro Sala 4th, Tim Davis up into 5th place ahead of Harold Heisman. There's Mark Galvin, there's Anthony Reid, and Tim Davis then is flying through the field. He's now up, as you see, into 5th position as the leader goes through. Gugelmin is going to win this race easily, provided he just keeps going.
Yes, I'm glad it wasn't Henry Stock, because he's driving a very smooth and sensible race now that both the front row men fell on their swords by their own stupidity, and he's taken full advantage of that and is really stroking away from this top-class Formula 3 field in most impressive style.
Yes, you'll see now the difference between a Reynard with a VW engine and a Reynard with the Saab engine, because the white car is Sandro Sala. He's got the Saab Swedish engine in his car in its first year of Formula 3 racing, the engine that is. Behind him he's got Tim Davis with the now dominant VW engine in Formula 3, and their chassis are identical. They're chasing the 3rd car driven by lady driver Cathy Muller. There she is, number 9. Sandro Sala, 27 in 4th position. Tim Davis closing in 5th place. Harold Heisman is still 6th. Mark Galvin is still 7th. Anthony Reid is still 8th. 10 laps completed, 10 to go. This is the sort of Formula 3 racing we used to see in the, quotes, old days, and last season it wasn't nearly as exciting as this. Admittedly, the battle is for 3rd place, with Russell Spence there in 2nd, a long way behind Gugelmin, the leader, and a long way ahead of Muller. But what a scrap this is for 3rd, and Tim Davis is up ahead of Sandro Sala.
Yes, Davis got sort of inside at the first of the corners and then managed to make it around the outside of the next one, and it was an excellent manoeuvre, and so Tim Davis is into 4th place and could well get back to challenge leaders. Whether he'd be able to get through and then have any chance of chasing for 2nd place remains to be seen. He'll need to get through quickly.
Yeah, and Harold Heisman is having a go in the red and white car at Sandro Sala in front of him. So still Muller 3rd, up to 4th, Tim Davis, and he's going to take Cathy Muller before very much longer, I should think. Tim Davis, I think, regards himself as not having all that much time in Formula 3. He's 35 years old, compared with an average age of about 25 in this formula. And Tim, through shortage of money, like so many drivers in British racing, they cannot seem to raise the sponsorship. On the continent it is possible, but Tim Davis is now enjoying Tim Stakes' sponsorship from Swallow Racing, and he's certainly making the most of that money, because he's got the right car, he's got the right engine, he's got plenty of experience, and you can see that he's putting it to good use as he chases Cathy Muller, who seems to have something loose at the back of the car, the engine fairing, I think.
Yes, but it certainly doesn't seem to be slowing her down through the corners. She's throwing her car most impressively through the chicanes, and in fact Tim Davis made no impression on her at all through the twisty bit then, but he's pulling her in now with the advantage of the slipstream on the straight, and he seems to be well positioned to get a run at her into the final chicane.
Yeah, some of the drivers used to have a rather superior attitude about Cathy Muller. They thought that because she was a woman that it would be easy to pass her. But Cathy Muller is ready to bang wheels with anybody. Is she going to bang them with Tim Davis? No, she's not. Tim goes through and takes third place at the right-hander, at the chicane, at the end of lap 12 for him. He's got 8 laps to go. He's now up into third position. And I'm going to put a stopwatch on Russell Spence, who is in second position, and Tim Davis, who is now in that third position, and we'll see if he's gaining any ground. 4.5 seconds between Russell Spence and Tim Davis in the green and black car, the man with the white helmet that you're looking at now, number 4, professional racing driver, Grovewood Award winner, British Formula 4 2000 champion of 1983, and in his first year of Formula 3 racing, who led, who spun off, who has recovered well from his mistake, has come up from about 8th position back into 3rd by passing Harold Heisman, Cathy Muller, Sandro Sala and Mark Galvin, and you're looking at Harold Heisman now in the Marlboro British car, the red and white one, and that 4.5 seconds gap seems to be getting smaller to me as we look at Tim Davis coming down past Brooklands. He's doing about 140, 145 miles an hour as he comes down to the chicane, throws it through the left, the right. He's pulled away from Cathy Muller, and the gap between Russell Spence and Tim Davis now, as Tim Davis crosses my timing point, it's 4 seconds. So Tim Davis has taken half a second out of Russell Spence in half a lap.
Yes, he's just about on schedule at that rate to sort of catch him by the end of the race, but whether he'll have time to pass him, he looks visibly closer this time. I think he's really pulling him in, and he's left that bunch that he took so long to get through. But of course, it was his mistake that started all the trouble. He really had quite a comfortable lead, was in command of the race, had no business to be making error, and he spun it in really a slow pace that it just shouldn't happen. It was quite an unnecessary effort, but he's certainly put on a stirring drive since. Now it appears it's just starting to rain at the moment, not hard enough to make the track wet, but it's fine drizzle, and if it keeps going like this, we're going to have a wet track for the end of the race, so this should liven things up a bit.
Especially as they are on slick tyres. Look closely at Tim Davis's tyres and you'll see that they're what are known as slicks. No tread pattern on them at all. They are designed to be used in totally dry conditions, and you can imagine that even if there is a film of dampness and the rain is coming down now, definitely, and Tim Davis, the gap between Tim Davis and Russell Spence is down to 3.8 seconds.
Yes, this has turned into a really sharp shower, and the track is visibly wet, the spray coming off their slick tyres, and this will really sort out the men from the boys. Now, I'm wondering what the organisers will do, because it really is a sharp shower, and on slicks, if the track starts to get puddles, things really become a bit dangerous. And of course, it's raining harder over the far side of the track than it is where we are, but it's raining hard enough everywhere.
And still in the lead, let us not forget, is Maurizio Gugelmin in the Dick Bennett's Ralt. There is Russell Spence second in the PMC Warmer style Ralt. And that's the bump, the notorious bump at Church Corner, which has been flattened out. And here is Maurizio Gugelmin with spray as he approaches the corner, the chicane, coming up from his rear tyres. He's really tiptoeing through now. You can see the plumes of spray coming up from his rear tyres, but of course it's just as bad for everybody else as it is for Gugelmin on lap 16 now. And as Russell Spence goes through, the gap now between Russell Spence second and Tim Davis in third position is 4.3 seconds, so it looks as though Spence is making better use of the wet conditions than Davis is.
Yes, I should think Tim Davis has had a bit of a loss of confidence after his earlier spin on a perfectly grippy dry track, and has probably done the sensible thing in his own mind and settled for third place and doesn't want to stick his neck out too far. He obviously wants points for the championship.
And here is the chicane then as Tim Davis goes through, and Harold Heisman spinning off in the chicane, and Kathy Muller, who had been passed by Heisman on the approach to the chicane, going through and retaking the position that she had before. So the order now, as we look across this now thoroughly wet Thruxton circuit, which is really taxing the drivers. In the lead, it is still Maurizio Gugelmin, and there he is. In second position, it is Russell Spence, and off spins Keith Fine, the man who led one Class B, and they're spinning off everywhere, you can see. Off goes the roll. The number 74 there is off altogether.
Well, the good news is that it's now stopped raining. That it was one little, fairly small but rather violent cloud that has now passed, and so the track isn't going to get any wetter, and the drivers at least know what confronts them.
Yeah, so number 74 was actually Kevin Jones, who was number 76. My apologies for that. Tim Davis flying along, and he's chasing Gugelmin really hard.
And through all this drama and excitement, Andy Wallace is up into fourth place. He's struggling, having got off the back of the field after stalling on the front row. But when the track got wet, it was finally the Charles Eden's cars spinning in the background there. And really, it is very difficult, these conditions, because there'll be a few puddles on the track. The track, in fact, is quite grippy to these slick tires where it's just wet. But as soon as water actually lies on it, then it really is quite difficult, because the tires aquaplane and don't hit the road surface.
That is a quite astounding performance by Andy Wallace, because up into third place, having started absolutely last. Well, there is the race leader, Gugelmin, coming through to complete his 17th lap. Is he going to stay on the circuit and win? You can see there's one car off, there's another one driving away, and that's Stephen Anskar, the Swedish driver, being passed by Gugelmin, who leads into lap 18. Russell Spence still in second position, going through the tail enders, and through in third position. Actually, it is Tim Davis in third position.
Well, Russell Spence is a good deal closer to Gugelmin, much closer. He's used the wet road well. There he is coming into the picture third there with the back marker in the way. And Andy Wallace came out of the chicane in front of the pits in the most spectacular slide, running wide onto the grass, but he held it brilliantly. And he has closed very markedly on Tim Davis, and is now, by the end of this lap, will probably be challenging for third place. So Andy Wallace is absolutely flying in the wet conditions. Russell Spence is using them to good advantage as well.
Right, now let's see them through the chicane and get the positions with the two Swallow Racing Team cars, third and fourth. There is Tim Davis in third position, and there behind him in fourth place his teammate Andy Wallace. But coming down to the chicane at the end of the 18th lap, it's Gugelmin on the left, number 3, the leader. Getting much closer to him, as James pointed out, is number 1, Russell Spence. There's Spence in the background, and the gap between Gugelmin and Spence now is down to 2.4 seconds. Somebody else spins off in the background. Never mind that, because on goes Gugelmin now. Spence is closing fast. A battle developing for third position between Tim Davis and Andy Wallace, his teammate. Davis is still third, Wallace is fourth. There is only 1.7 seconds between them as the first and second, Gugelmin and Spence, go into and out of the complex. There is Gugelmin. Spence is gaining all the time. This is lap 19 out of 20. 1:20. Only one full lap at the end of this one. Russell Spence, the hard man from Bradford, in the warmer style. Ralt is closing on the other Ralt of this man, number 3, Brazilian Mauricio Gugelmin. And Russell Spence is the man who has won 2 out of 3 rounds of the championship so far. Finished second in the other one, leads the championship with 25 points to Andy Wallace's 15. Andy Wallace is in second place in the championship, in 4th place in the race. And here they come. These are the top 2. And you'll see in a moment. No, you won't, because we're staying with Gugelmin.
Well, this is a big, big test for Gugelmin. He's about to get through the chicane. He'll then be starting his last lap, and it will really be a test to see whether he can keep his cool, because Spence is closing all the time, but if Gugelmin just keeps his cool, it should be difficult for Spence to pass once they get through the second complex. But Spence is closing. I feel very sorry for the Brazilian. He's driven so well, and this weather has got the better of him, but you have to drive in all conditions.
It was 1.3 seconds as the last lap started. You can see for yourselves what the gap is now, with Spence visibly still closing on Mauricio Gugelmin. It is still Tim Davis in 3rd place. It is still Andy Wallace in 4th position. In 5th position behind Wallace, it's Sandro Sala in the Reynard Saab. And in 5th position, it's his teammate, Sandro Sala's teammate, Anthony Reid. Look at this, out of the fastest part of the course, 140 miles an hour. Well, not quite the fastest, because they're still building up.
Yes, and Spence isn't close enough, unless the Brazilian makes a mistake. He's driven very coolly. Oh, so there he goes! Oh, tremendous stuff.
And I'll tell you exactly what happened there. That was the bump at Church Corner that used to be. It's been ironed out this year. There is new tarmac, and Gugelmin hit it faster than anybody ever had. And Russell Spence gives the victory sign as he goes through at the end of the chicane. A fantastic win for Russell Spence, his 3rd in 4 races, to extend his championship lead.